Capablanca had one of the coolest sounding names in chess history, and perhaps the most effortless style. He didn't like studying openings or calculating long variations. Capablanca himself said, "I only see one move ahead, but it's always the correct one." And today we'll decode that simple but surprisingly effective style. Capablanca is playing white against his long-term rival Alexander Alekhine. And initially we got the Slav defense, but it doesn't really matter. Basically, both sides are just developing their pieces. It doesn't matter too much. And yet, very quickly, we'll come to one thing which I think is very interesting, because right now at this point, Alekhine started to trade right here and playing pawn to c5, which I think already shows you clearly the difference between these two. Now, if you think about Capablanca, he was all about not overcomplicating matters. And before Nike's just do it, there was Capablanca's just develop it for the opening stage. He was just putting his pieces to good positions in an opening. That's pretty much it, right? And you can see that Alekhine playing black is already trying to build up some plans, doing something, right? Putting pressure to white center. I'm pretty sure if I take this back, that if Capablanca would be playing this as black, he would be just, okay, what I need to do, gotta develop this bishop, let's play this, and let's develop the bishop, right? That's probably what he would do, right? And yet, black capture right here, played pawn to c5, trying to put some pressure, create complications. Now Capablanca sees that, this exchange is probably going to open up this nice diagonal for his bishop. So he says, okay, go ahead. He just lands his knight to this nice central square. And after the trade in the middle of the board, indeed, now this diagonal is open for his bishop. And now we can already see that black starts experiencing first little troubles. Because how do you develop this bishop, right? You don't want to play b6 right here, because now white can go knight c6, something like that. That would be pretty annoying for black. And if not, then what do you do? Like, trading on e5 is also not a simple solution for black, because now white would start hitting this knight, and if it goes, bishop takes h7 is another issue. And therefore, now black already needs to start thinking how to untangle all these pieces. Alekhine played knight to b6, and I also got to mention that at the time of this game, Alekhine was 21 years old. He was already very strong, but not yet at his prime, as you can look at the photo. Here, Capablanca was 25 years old and already a legend. By the way, there is something very interesting about this photo, which we'll figure out later. For now, let's stick to the game. And one more cool thing about the photo. If you look at Alekhine on the left, you see that he's in the uniform. Why is that so? Because he was attending the law school. So even though the game was played roughly 100 years ago, some things never changed. His parents were probably like, son, this chess thing is good, but you gotta become a doctor or a lawyer. Anyways, back to the game. Capablanca goes knight to g5, which illustrates his second very important trait. And the idea is replace heroic attacks by small combinations. All right. He was known by those small combinations, which at the time they called in French something like petite combination, or if you ever guys know French, please tell me how it is pronounced correctly, something like that. So basically small combinations. And the idea is he's now taking aim at this pawn on h7, right? The knight attacks it, plus this battery of a bishop plus a queen, hits it as well. And if black hardly played h6, which black didn't in the game, that will result in immediate loss. Do you see why? I'll give you a few seconds. It's bishop to h7 check, and suddenly black is done. It's literally a checkmate on the next move, because if black captures it, there is queen takes h7. That is a checkmate, all right? And if the king moves, now this pawn is hanging, knight takes f7 leads to a checkmate as well. That's pretty bad. Now, of course, black did not play this in the actual game, like played pawn to g6 to barricade this diagonal for the white bishop. But nevertheless, you can see Capablanca's idea, right? While somebody like Tal or Kasparov were into those very intense, attacks. They were willing to complicate matters, sacrifice materials, long, complex calculations. Capablanca was trying to create those small threats to kind of probe his opponent, but usually it was limited to like 1, 2, 3 moves max, right? So that he doesn't blunder something and miscalculate, right? And by the way, this brings us directly to the third rule, right? How do you play here in this position as white? Think about it. There are so many things that white can theoretically play, and yet Capablanca followed basically the first rule of the healthcare, right? First, do not harm, right? He was always very attentive to his opponent. He knew that you may not be playing the most brilliant chess ever in history, but the main thing you gotta do is not to blunder, not to mess up, right? And therefore, he was very attentive to what his opponent is trying to do to be sure that Capablanca doesn't blunder. And right now, there is a threat of queen takes d4. Very important to notice, because you can get too much, focused on your kingside attack and just forget that black can capture this pawn, attack your knight, and it may be a problem. Therefore, he simply retreated the knight back, protecting this pawn on d4, and even though this may seem like a waste of time, in reality, it provoked this move pawn to g6. Now all these dark squares are kind of weak around the black king. Now White can possibly play bishop to h6 on the next move, which already is somewhat unpleasant, and in order to stop this, Alekhine played king to g7. By the way, I gotta give credit to black, because here king to g7 is not such an obvious move to play. And initially when I saw it, I thought like, I don't know, maybe that's too much, just wasting time for this instead of developing. But then I realized that if black were to play something else, such as bishop to d7, just a normal developing move, there could be bishop to h6 first, striking the rook. Now the rook has to go, and after that, there's a really beautiful follow-up. I don't know if Capablanca saw it, but it's knight takes f7 first. Sacrificing the knight, hitting the queen, black has to take it. Now bishop takes g6, the second sacrifice in a row, completely removing all these little bodyguards around the black king. And then it follows up with knight to e5 check, which is also this double attack to this pawn. The king is forced to move. Now queen takes g6 and a checkmate on the next move. That would be really, really nasty. Of course, Alekhine calculated that and avoided that. That just explains why king to g7 was a crucial move for black to play. Now I decided to give the exclamation mark to Alekhine for playing this move to support the guy. He's doing a good job here. Capablanca just develops the bishop, bishop g5, putting the bishop to this active position. And by the way, quick question. How would you play here as black? And you can try to use the lessons that you've already learned so that you're not just hearing my commentary, but you're also actually trying to implement this. You're playing black, it's black to play. How would you play here? Remember the first rule, just develop it in an opening. Again, I'm pretty sure Capablanca himself would probably see this bishop, would just move it here, that would probably bring the rook right here, and only after that would really start thinking about something or calculating something. In contrast to this, if I take this back, black actually played knight to d5. You see that Alekhine, again, is a different kind of guy. He's calculating something. He sees I need to reinforce this. Maybe I need to create this threat. He's already thinking about something, right? Which Capablanca was quite against, right? He was prioritizing simplicity. And now it is white to play, and he goes rook to c1. Now, that is kind of still in spirit of just develop it, because it brings the rook into play. And that also reminds me another famous quote from another legendary player of the early chess development, Morphy, who said, help your pieces so they help you. Really one of the very core golden rules of chess. Just be sure that those pieces that you have, that you put them to active positions. By the way, what does that mean, active? It means that they control a lot of squares. That's it, right? So rook to c1, the rook on an open file is going to control a whole lot of squares right here. Now black goes bishop d7, finally developing this bishop, and now it is white to play. Now, how would white play here? Now, again, very interesting thing, and basically Capablanca here uses the two rules that we talked about before. And the first thing is creating small combinations, but the second thing, as we also discussed, to be very careful, to notice your opponent's moves and to notice any danger so that you don't mess up. And now we see that there is potentially a knight to b4 thing, putting pressure to these two pieces. There's also potentially a rook to c8 hitting the queen, and Capablanca sees that in both cases the queen is kind of exposed. And he decided to retreat the queen somewhere. He goes queen to d2, which prevents this, frankly, quite little danger, but nevertheless, and simultaneously creates that little combo, bishop to h6, check, and then grabs the bishop. So he's combining those two ideas of being very attentive to his opponent's threats and also creating those small combinations. And by the way, you see that it doesn't seem like a big deal, but I would again highlight this because his level of accuracy was superb. There was a period of 8 years where he didn't lose a single game, which is absolutely remarkable and unique. And by the way, there was also a quick story about Capablanca. There was just once when he played a terrible blunder that people could not really explain. He blundered a bishop. I pulled off that game for a second just to illustrate the story better. So here Capablanca was playing black and he played bishop a6, one of the most terrible blunders he played in his professional career, because after queen to a4, which white played, that basically just loses a piece. And people could not understand how come Capablanca, such an accurate player, played this blunder, and then they figured out. It turned out that in this tournament, Capablanca had an affair with some blonde, and to his shock, his wife entered the tournament hall, and his wife was supposed to be in another country. And this opening surprise shocked Capablanca so much that he blundered a piece. But fortunately for him, usually he was quite accurate. Back to the game against Alekhine, Capablanca has just played queen to d2, creating a threat of bishop to h6 check with this skewer, and therefore black played knight to g8, which is a very nice defensive move. From g8, the knight guards that square h6, And plus, on top of this, black wants to trade off this active bishop of white on g5. Again, really nice defensive maneuver by black. White trades on e7, queen captures, and now white played bishop to e4. Capablanca noticed that black's got basically just one active piece, this knight on b4, that is centralized and is controlling a lot of squares, making it harder for white to advance forward, and he decides to trade it off. But also there's one interesting remark here. In his game, when he commented on this move bishop to e4, I don't remember the exact quote, but he says something like, "That's a deep move, and they don't want to bother you with all the long, calculations, so if you want, you can figure it out by yourself." So which shows that he didn't really like to calculate a lot. And frankly, Stockfish is unimpressed at all, right? Stockfish says this is wrong, black could have played knight to f6 and, illustrate that the move was wrong. And maybe Capablanca was hoping for something like this. But again, modern computers show that it's just a check, nothing serious, and black is doing totally fine. Nevertheless, back to the game, perhaps Capablanca's confidence somehow also affected Alekhine, and he decided not to play knight f6, but instead went for bishop to b5, hitting the rook, and now white goes rook to e1, combining, basically removing the rook from danger and also putting it into this nice file where it potentially x-rays the queen, which feels uncomfortable for black, and black goes queen to d6. Now Capablanca can execute his actual intent and trade off this knight in a very favorable situation, because normally in a position like that, black would really wish to capture with a queen, not with a pawn, because capturing with the queen makes sure that the queen is active, it starts putting pressure all around, you could play rook to d8 and start pressuring this pawn on d4, everything is great. But right now, black cannot do this because of rook to c5 with a double attack, and black is going to lose this bishop on b5 after the queen moves. Therefore, because of this line, black had to recapture the pawn, which makes this queen passive on the d file, and overall, it's hard for black to do something next. Now, it is white to play. How would he play here? Again, let's recall that idea. He loved to probe his opponents with little threats, which also reminds me another interesting thing that I think Magnus Carlsen once said, the biggest lesson that he learned from Garry Kasparov was that if you create 10 threats in a row, your opponent will eventually blunder. And Capablanca really loved that, creating those little threats consistently until his opponent collapses, right? And here he played queen to a5. I love that a lot, because to find attacking moves, you got to focus your attention on opponent's half of the board and ask yourself, how can you go there, right? That's the method. Applying this method, you can see that there are two potential attacking moves here, rook to c5 or queen to a5. Capablanca played queen to a5, just attacking this bishop, pawn to a6, and then queen to c7, targeting the queen, and most importantly, this pawn on b7, because of course black could, and they easily traded queens, but now this pawn is hanging. And that's another thing about Capablanca. While most of chess players try to checkmate their opponent's king, Capablanca really loves attacking pawns, because they're small, weak, can't really run away, super easy to attack them. All right, now this pawn is hanging, and what black also noticed is that apart from the pawn, which black could potentially, defend somehow or move it forward, there is one more threat. Can you see it? Just focus your attention on black's half of the board and ask yourself, how can I go forward and make a threat? There was a move knight to g5 in this case, extremely unpleasant for black because it targets this pawn. But if black does something, there is also knight to e6 threat. Notice that the pawn is pinned. Knight to e6 would be a double attack to the king and the rook. And because the pawn is pinned, I'll show you, let's say black guards, and now knight to e6 check, that would actually win the exchange. Now, black figured it out, and in this position, instead of protecting the pawn, he played pawn to h6, stopping the white knight from jumping there, but now Capablanca could just capture this rook on b7, and now he's already up a pawn. By the way, there is also another interesting quote from Magnus that I remember. When he was asked about Capablanca, Magnus said something like, Capablanca is considered to be this brilliant endgame player, but the reality is he accumulated those positional advantages throughout the middle game, and so when he got to an endgame, he already was superior, and that's how he crushed so many players in an endgame. And now this example definitely proves it right. Now black goes rook to c8, and again Capablanca asks himself, what is black trying to do? That is rook to c2, attacking these both pawns, and he immediately plays a cautious move, pawn to b3, getting this pawn out of danger, and once black played rook to c2, attacking this one, now this one can comfortably come to a4, and not only it's no longer attacked, it actually hits this bishop on b5. Now black plays bishop to e2, it's hard to criticize black for this move because he's going down, and he definitely needs to complicate matters and create counter threats, which is something he's trying to do. But somehow this move actually backfires. Because now, at this point, Capablanca sees that, Black tries to trade off this knight by his bad bishop, which is very limited, and he goes knight to h4, which once again creates this unexpected threat of knight takes g6 because the pawn is pinned. Now, quite a weird looking threat, but nevertheless. And somehow this 2 horsepower is enough for Capablanca to drive the game forward, and Black is kind of defenseless actually. Because what do you do about that, right? I mean, if the king comes here to step out of the pin along the 7th rank, that walks into the other problem, knight to d7 fork, right, this way. Therefore, that is not a solution. And otherwise, what do you do? Knight takes g6 is coming. Black played pawn to h5, I guess providing an escape square for the king, but now knight takes g6, indeed that beautiful idea, grabs the pawn, hits the rook, and Black cannot recapture because the pawn is pinned. Since the rook is attacked, Black had to move it away, rook to e8. Now rook takes f7, check, and that is a real nightmare. These two knights somehow protect each other, protect the rook, and this king is almost checkmated. Goes king to h6, that's why Black played pawn h5 to begin with, to provide this escape square, maybe trying to escape right there, but Capablanca shuts it down with pawn to f4, creating this checkmating net. There are no checkmating threats right now, but the king cannot go anywhere, and therefore White just will need to maneuver his knight somewhere, and that threat will appear. Black goes pawn to a5. I mean, it's really sad how dominant Capablanca is in this game. I mean, if Black in this position had to play pawn to a5, just think about this. There was no better move to play. He's completely restricted, out of options. He doesn't know what to do. Pawn to a5, now knight to h4, creating the threat of knight to f5 checkmate. Black is already defenseless. He had to sack the rook right here by recaptures. King to g5. Black is desperately trying to escape or to counterattack. Now pawn to g3, protecting the knight. King to g4. Black is trying to escape right here. And actually, sometimes that trick can work out, because occasionally that king on h3 together with the rook, can create some counter threats. But of course, not here. Here that would be too optimistic. Now Capablanca just goes rook to g7 with a check and a double attack. The king is forced to move to h3, and now knight to g2 creates this unstoppable threat of knight to f4 checkmate. And looking back at the photo that we saw initially, you can see that it is actually this exact position, where Capablanca, with his elegant confidence, is looking at the board, and now we see why Alekhine doesn't want to look at the board, because he sees that the checkmate is coming and he cannot stop it. Personally, I learned a lot from Capablanca's games. I analyzed hundreds of his games, and I formulated for myself those principles, as I call it, of how to play simple but effective chess, right? If you like this, I'll put a link down below to my free masterclass where I explain the right thinking process in greater details. And also, if you want to see how he was so brilliant in endgames, you may like to watch this video right there, because Capablanca himself said in endgames you can see those positional principles in a purified form, and then it makes it much easier to apply it for any other stage of the game. So check this out.